Hey everyone, I'm back on the English 431 page. You'll notice that the website changed a little bit. It wasn't related to the pandemic necessarily. Just something just kind of went wrong with the code on the website, and I don't know because I don't code. But in any case, I needed to switch the theme, it's called in WordPress, in order to make things work right again. I was just reviewing the video that I gave you last time, and I hope you've had a chance to review it as well. Some other videos that I don't know why dry fly and emerger fishing is here because I don't do that. Uh, but in any case, what we've got then is a situation in which we're building toward a paper in which you all, either singly or in groups, will try to answer the question, what is good writing in that discipline, that department, that major, that unit, that place? Our goal should be to pick something that we're relatively familiar with, or at least somewhat familiar with, or that we have contacts that we can use in order to advance our thinking about the different kinds of genres that appear. Now, the last time when we watched this video right here, and look at me scanning through my own work, we did several things, and I'm hoping this kind of work is useful for you. What Liz Wardle was doing was giving us several interesting arguments. First off, she was introducing this idea that her research had led her to believe that English 130 and courses like it often feature things she was calling mutt genres. That is, where it's not totally clear what the situation uh, that affords the genre, or the purpose of the genre, or even the conventions associated with the genre are very clear. And it may not be clear who the audience is and how they use that particular text. So she also gave us this term transfer, and that is one of the things I think is most important about the different kinds of things we could do with this project. When we're talking about genre, and Irene Clark here is talking about addressing genre in the Writing Center, we are talking about what we can do as tutors and as mentors to advance not only uh, students' ability to write in a variety of different genres in the university, but also to be more mindful and have a better, deeper rhetorical awareness of the moves that they make and the conventions that they use in a variety of different kinds of situations. So, again, this project could be very practical for students, but I think it could be useful for us in advancing our own thinking. Now, a couple of things in Irene Clark's article addressing genre in the Writing Center that I think could be useful for us to pull out. First off, this is one of the things that we've started this project with, is a notion that helping students understand how the goals of academic writing are achieved through a text could be one of our biggest goals. Simply teaching a set of arbitrary rules will not enable students to apply what they have learned to new situations that involve writing. That is what Liz Wardle was calling transfer last time. Now, what Clark's article does, and I'm sorry for all of the highlighting in this piece, I've put the most important stuff, at least for me, in the darkest color highlight here. What Clark's article does is goes a little bit deeper into the history of the concept of genre. And it's kind of interesting for us to think about just as kind of English majors. If you ask yourself, for example, like John Swales did in the 1980s, um, in what books does a person die on page one? You immediately start thinking in terms of genre. Why? Because there's only a couple types that we can imagine, like a murder mystery, where that would ever happen, where that would be a good choice, where that would meet the expectations of the genre. The other one that we could probably think of is the Bildungsroman, things like Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, or other kinds of things like that, where it's important that we see the kind of the beginnings of a life in order to understand the depth of the work the protagonist does in order to reach the heights of success later on. So, this new version of genre, when we get beyond these kinds of text types like novel or poem or other kinds of things like that, we are getting to a notion of genre as a very active site for people in terms of learning and in terms of actually doing work in the world. Uh, but in terms of the pedagogical context, like Clark says here, this concept of genre suggests that, uh, oh, this is the old version. Um, Sorry, I'm backing up here. In a pedagogical context, the old version of genre was one in which you just emphasized form and a simplistic application of particular formulaic text slots without questioning the rationale for doing so. The most notorious example of this approach is the paradigm of the 5-paragraph essay, which many students apply indiscriminately to any writing task they are asked to complete without questioning why there should be 5 rather than 4 or 6 paragraphs, or without examining the relationship of one paragraph to another. The thing I was really trying to get to is actually here on the other page, page 9. As defined by Carolyn Miller, genre is a social action that involves both situation and motive, with the term situation described as a complex of persons, events, objects, and relations presenting an exigence, if you remember English 335, that can be allayed through the mediation of discourse. So, what does this mean for us? Genres are characterized by regularities in textual form. That is, a genre becomes a genre by being used in a number of different ways at a number of different times, repeatedly, and to an extent that people recognize them as genres for the action of completing some goal. She goes on to say in this paragraph that similarities in textual form and feature derive from an effective response to situations that writers encounter repeatedly. So, what we are moving toward then, and I'm making a pun with the word move, is that with this assignment you can not only help students with their understanding and appreciation of the purpose, the situation, the audience, the conventions that drive a particular genre. You can also, for yourself, get straight on what genre theory is and become a better tutor or mentor by adapting a genre approach. You can, in effect, be a genre teacher teaching genre awareness, or what they call genre knowledge. We use the term genre knowledge to refer to an individual's repertoire of situationally appropriate responses to recurrent situations, from immediate encounters to distanced communication through the medium of print, and more recently, the internet. One way to study the textual character of disciplinary communication is to examine both the situated actions of writers and the communicative systems in which disciplinary actors participate. Okay, craziness here, but what does it mean for us? Of course, it means that you all can do this work for students. That is, you can understand that when we use a piece of writing, we are using a genre, and that is a situated action of a writer in a communicative system. Now, what are those pieces of writing made up of? John Swales says right here, he characterized them as moves, and that is exactly what we want to do with this project. As I'm beginning to put my ideas together in terms of a writing assignment, I will just say to you, it'll be important that what we do is we find out in this particular discipline or this unit, this department, this major or this minor, we want to know what are the genres that are operative there, but then what are some of the moves in those genres? John Swales, uh, his work is very important for this. In the 1990 book Genre Analysis, he was mapping the common communicative purposes of different kinds of things like scientific articles, and he called it creating a research space, the CARS model. He said that what authors would do in a variety of different ways would announce an issue that they would like to explore, they would talk about the research that has already been done on that issue or on that problem. But then they would make a turn, and their next sentence would say something like, but to date, no one has adequately mapped the blah, blah, blah of the thing. And I'm sorry, I'm putting it in such blunt language here. But they'd say, to date, we've still not done enough work in this small area. And that was the research space that they would carve for themselves in the work. That is a move. That is a place in which authors are asserting their authority to fill that research space with their own research. They're saying, I am the one who can plug this hole. I can fill this gap. I can do this thing that hasn't yet been done. Just read the rest of my uh, research. So the piece that we've got for today, then, this piece by Clark, is good for tutors. Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I think it could be good for us as researchers when we start this process, because what she's doing with a variety of different examples is she's mapping what those genres are and what moves are often featured in those genres. Before we get there, I just want to give you this one quote that I think is really interesting because this always comes up. Are we just like slavishly appropriating genre for our own purposes, or are we being creative in some way? This is the you gotta know the rules before you break them argument. What she says in response is, what makes such an essay creative? That is, creativity is only possible because of an awareness of a genre. She says, what makes an essay creative is that it is pushed across the boundaries associated with the essay in the interest of originality. However, some remnants of those boundaries must be present in order for the creativity to occur. A work is regarded as creative when those boundaries are transcended in an original and unusual way, so that the work represents a unique union of both constraint and choice. Okay, so then what we get with the rest of the piece, as she moves through a genre approach to argumentation and then later a genre approach to narrative, is that she's doing the work that we will do. She is saying, here is how one would understand the genre of the academic argument in its broadest sense. And that is pretty broad, by the way. And here's how people would work with the genre of the narrative. Just a couple of things that I would point out to you really quickly. What she's doing here is, toward the end of the article, is offering us examples of ways in which students might have faulty or better understandings of the genre itself and what that can particularly lead to. So what we've got then is a faulty understanding of genre when a student begins a paper with something like, have you ever wondered what it would be like to have Christmas dinner with the Kung Bushmen of the Kalahari? Such an opening, she says, seems incongruous not only because it's unlikely that any reader would ever answer yes, but also because direct address of this type establishes a tone that seems inappropriate for a formal essay. She goes through this example, then she goes into a comparative review. Again, it's too bad that she didn't offer more positive examples here. But in each, the deviation from the genre is something that is marked for the reader, that is, the teacher or the editor of the journal, such that they can no longer kind of understand how much the writer has actually done or appreciate the work that they've done in their research. Here is the genre approach to narrative. She says one explanation with this particular layout, which never offered any kind of gestalt moment for the writer. But I started talking to him, and I was glad that I could cheer him up a bit. The insight that I developed from this awful moment of seeing a friend in the hospital was, from that day on, I am really careful whenever I drive because I don't want to end up in an accident like my friend. She says, one explanation is that the main point of this essay did not adhere to the generic features of what has come to be known as a narrative essay, in which the starting point and the turning point must be integrally related. The turning point or narrative reversal indicating a significant change in the narrator or protagonist, a change that is intended to enlighten the reader. So again, I think a lot of the things that go wrong for student essays, when they go wrong, and let's also note that in different kinds of ways, teachers are sometimes at fault when they don't work hard enough to help students understand uh, genres, right? Uh, and how they function as communicative acts. One of the things that goes wrong is that writers just kind of fill in the parts formulaically. That is, they think it's like a math equation where they have to plug in X and Y and Z and reach a conclusion, rather than understanding that a genre is always a matter of following certain kinds of conventions because of the presence of a reader who's expecting those generic conventions to take place, but then also bending the genre for his or her purposes so that they achieve something new. Uh, we also have to recognize that sometimes professors read unkindly, as she says right here. As we in writing centers know from considerable experience, a number of professors, particularly those with little background in writing pedagogy, will assign writing without being aware themselves that they are expecting a well-framed argument with all the accompanying constraints on the purpose, the writer, the nature of evidence, the conceptualization of the audience that characterize writing in the academy, not to mention the subtleties of tone and voice that Elbow refers to as the rubber-gloved quality to the voice and register typical of most academic discourses. So these professors, I'm not talking about my colleagues, but it has happened nationwide, we'll just kind of mark the paper with a low grade and move on. What we have is a chance in 431 to do more, to offer students and perhaps professors a glimpse at the richness of the genres that they are assigning in their classes and asking for students to work within and outside of those bounds with more rhetorical awareness. So again, I think that this will help the work that we do with this final project, and you can do this collaboratively or you can do it singly, but it's going to be a thing that I'm going to continue to make some videos to try to help you with as you're starting to think about what discourse community, discipline, department, unit, program, major, minor, you'd like to focus your attention on. And of course, there's lots of materials out there, but our goal should be to make it for, Chico State business majors, Chico State sustainable manufacturing majors, or other things like Chico State history majors. That's all for now.